hopefully this ends up working. We'll find out. A little messy right now, so I do apologize. But starting from over here, we have ultramarine blue, cobalt teal, which is kind of dry. I don't know that I'll end up using that today. Chromium oxide green. That's transparent. Red oxide, cadmium red, cadmium yellow, Naples yellow, yellow ochre. That's Indian yellow. It's just on there because I'm trying it and it's new. I actually don't know that I really like this that much. Forgot the name of that one, but it's also dry, not using it. That is cadmium orange. Then we got burnt sienna, burnt umber, manganese violet, like a purple violet, quinacridone, magenta, and titanium white. I used that palette for a few paintings already, so it's messy, and this will probably be the last painting that I do with that palette. It's actually a lot of the same colors that I used yesterday we'll be using today. And yeah, let's get started. I might have to put my palette this way. I try to look cute for videos that I make for you guys, but honestly today is so cold and I woke up not really feeling all that great. So if you're in the same boat that I am, then let's just get cozy and paint, because sometimes you just need days like that. Not for social media, just for yourself. I have a printout of the painting. I have my reference on my iPad right there, but I don't know why that just sounded like I had a Texas accent. That was ridiculous. So let's try that again. I have my iPad reference here, painting here. Also printed out a version of it because there are actually some colors in the printout that I like more than what's in the iPad version. The backlight kind of brightened everything up, and there's some things about the printout that it almost like has a little bit more contrast, and I like it. Got some of my big brushes out too, my big kid brushes. I've been really inspired lately to kind of improve my brush stroke technique. I'm kind of just wanting to try different brushes and holding it differently and just pushing myself. That's again one of the benefits of doing these 9x12s is they are kind of small enough that I get them done in one day. So if they end up not working out, I'm not really losing out on that much. And if they do work out, I gain a lot of experience very, very quickly. So I love doing these. And then I'm using Strathmore like 400 series oil linen paper. That's been my favorite so far. I can't say that I've tried many other oil papers, but I honestly love this one so much. I haven't really felt a need to try any other kind. And the other reason that so the reason that I brought that up is because they're relatively cheap. And that really helps as well with doing these paintings and doing a lot of practicing, is that I'm not investing so much money in supplies that it feels precious, because we've all been there. We know what that feels like when you're like, you buy a really nice linen canvas or something, and then all of a sudden your painting isn't going well and you're like, oh my God, I just spent all this money on a canvas. What in the world did I do? So by having a more cost-effective, cost-friendly material, it doesn't feel precious to me. So if I again, if it doesn't work out, then it's fine. It doesn't work out. An artist that's really been inspiring me lately is Jimena Agra. Her style, her painting style is just absolutely exquisite. And that's kind of who I'm channeling for this painting today. She has a very old master kind of technique to her brush strokes, and I'm here for it and I love it. So we're trying with bigger brushes. This is a hog bristle brush, which normally I use synthetics, but because they're soft and I really like the softness, but I don't know. I was just feeling very experimental today. I feel like it's been a while since I've done an instructional painting video. And I feel like actually since the last one I did, a lot of my style and kind of approach has changed. Which is cool. That's half the fun of having a YouTube as well, is that, you know, maybe one of my videos that you watched from a few years ago, maybe you learned something from it, and then as I learn more and change, maybe it'll allow you to learn and change as well. And yeah, you can kind of see some of the decisions I've made over the years and find what works for you, because there's no one absolute right way to approach a painting. I see just like ever so slightly a little bit of a green tinge back here, and I don't really want to mix. I don't want to mix a whole new green, but I was using so much green yesterday that some of it is still a little bit wet. So I'm just literally taking like remnant mud from yesterday and mixing that into what I just mixed. The thing that I liked more about this photo was that the background was actually a little bit darker, and it just had like less contrast to it, which you'll see when the whole painting comes together. I think it's gonna end up looking much nicer having a dark background. It'll just really make this subject pop even more. I'm going for a very photographic background right now. And I don't mean photographic as in realistic. I mean having a really strong sense of bokeh and depth. So this is going to be a very blurred out background, which is something that I've actually, it seems like it would be really easy, but sometimes I just get so tight in my painting that I just make it hard for myself to do that well. So that's one of the other things I'm working on today, is just like I kind of said, was just brush stroke control and not getting overly tight and small and just staying painterly, you know? Oh my gosh, I can see my horses outside my window right now, and they're going absolutely bonkers. are losing their minds. They're so fresh. The other thing that I really am trying to be mindful of in my paintings are my value shifts. Yeah, and just overall like initial value choices. Okay, then we've got a nice burnt sienna, kind of like ochre-y color right there. But again, it's very gray. I'm gonna be really bummed if you end up not being able to see anything that I'm painting because of this new setting that I have it on. I'm hoping that it works. I don't think it'll work every time, but if it works most of the time, then that's great. One of the things I've also really gotten in the habit of is that if I put the wrong color down and there's just like little extra hints of color somewhere, I'm not afraid to just take an even bolder color. So I took that like burnt sienna kind of mixture and just put it on top of the green, and because they're basically complementary colors, they canceled each other out, so it made that more subtle, which is exactly what it looks like in the reference, and it took very little work on my part. Like I already had that color mixed, and then just putting it with its complement or the color that was already down, it just kind of blended itself and worked out well. One thing I don't want, because of the nature of this background, is I don't want any really square edges because that'll draw a lot of attention to it. Ever so slightly taking the edge of my brush and dragging it over any of these hard edges. Good, okay, brilliant. I'm really trying to be conscientious of any strong like shapes that can, or strong edges, anything that can just grab attention. I do not want that in the background. The saddle, I don't know if you can see it, but this is the horse's head, and then there's a saddle right here. And this, I really want this to pop. So we're gonna have to blend a little bit of the horse, or the saddle, wow. And I definitely see. So one of the things that I'm doing right now, the brush that I'm using, it's really frayed. But the fact that it's basically like a filbert that's been used to its last points and is just, I don't know, really degraded. That's exactly what I want. I'm using a very frayed old hog bristle brush because we're going for that very bokeh-like kind of texture. And I'm thinking that the natural fray of the bristles are gonna just make that even easier. Like you can see it's putting down just kind of soft strokes, and that's exactly what I was hoping it would do. In areas that are still gonna be in shadow, or it's just like kind of a lighter shadow, I'll oftentimes taper or like halfway shade like that, so that when I put the next layer on, it just blends with the darker color already. So again, yeah, like in here, there's a lot of little shapes and stuff, but it is gonna be a little bit dark. Same with that, that's gonna be dark too, so. Mixing the background kind of back in to this dark so that it blends and stays really soft and there isn't much of a hard edge. I'm seeing kind of two colors in the saddle. There's like a kind of a reddy brown, very like muted burnt sienna. And then there's also a bit of like a reddy purple, which is really gorgeous. It's really like rich, kind of mahogany. So let's see if we can mix that and get it in the right places. These aren't the final colors, but before I add the highlight, I really want to make sure that what's beneath those highlights is blended how I want it to look and is soft enough. Oh, it looks pretty good. I'm just gonna add a little bit of that purple, just like right in there. And now we're gonna get a lighter color, which I'm gonna base off of burnt sienna and Naples yellow, but there's also kind of like a bluey highlight in there as well, which I think I'm gonna use my, what's it called? Violet gray. Violet gray is one of my absolute favorite colors. Now we'll do a little bit of that purpley color, which will just add that the coolness from the surrounding sky. So now that I have these bold marks, I go through and I almost carve them like a sculpture into the exact shape that I want them to be. There's a bunch of like jumbled metal in there, which I'm not going to worry about too much about getting it perfect. Okay, so now we're going to be basically one step closer. So we're still going to have that bokeh effect, but less of it. And we're going to see more color present in this horse. I don't know if this is exactly the right color that I want right now, but ooh, that was definitely not the right color. It was way too blue. I kind of like to layer color sometimes, so if it's not 100% right the first time, sometimes I do that intentionally just because I do think it, I don't know, it just gives really cool effect and dimension and a lot of life to your color. Essentially right now I'm seeing there's a lot of like blue undertones in some of these spots. And that's just what I'm doing. I'm just kind of mapping in some of these bluer areas, and then I'll map in some of the yellow areas. Which is fine. Like I said, sometimes I actually like to go a little bit too dark when I'm painting one on wet, because then I can layer pretty well and it gets a very realistic look. Pretty sure I'm gonna look back at this video when I'm editing, and most of what I'm saying is just gonna be incomplete sentences. So I am sorry, I apologize. I'm trying my best. Part of this area is a really similar color to what's in the back. So I'm just going to map that in while I have this color going. Right now you see me putting in basically like monotone colors, just one color, but I'm gonna layer it and add more on top to give it the dimension. I'm just essentially mapping in the majority color. That's the best way that I can just describe it. I'm squinting my eyes and looking at what the color is mostly, and then I'll go back and add little nuances and softening and all of the things. Some of these planes that are kind of turning away from the light that's shining are bluer. And then all the upward facing surfaces are a little more of a yellow. Okay, that's too saturated. And this is just kind of the art of color mixing, is like, actually, there's a big, I'm gonna put where some of like the bold yellows are down, because that's like kind of what the color is, but that's way too saturated. So you'll see what I do. I end up getting titanium white, which is mixed with a little bit of ultramarine blue. So it's cool. And when you blend it together on top of what we already just put down, it'll cool itself down. You know, this is where I like that I had put that darker tone down, because now when I can just put on a more concentrated titanium white and it just mixes itself, which is so fun. And now we get all those same color nuances, but they're not as saturated. Perfect. Love that. So you see how putting kind of like a more pure pigment down and then just putting titanium white over the top, or whatever, like some other color, can really really diffuse that dark color. Just add a little bit more texture and dimension in there. As we move forward, things are gonna start to look more and more saturated and textured. I'm taking that titanium white again. I'm just gonna start feathering some of these areas, because even though it's still blurry enough that we're not gonna see horse hair yet, there's a little bit of a hint that there's there. This might look like a little bit of absolute madness. And that's fair. But it's also what works really well for me. So when I'm doing these braids, for me, this is where in horse paintings and just kind of animals in general, where these frayed brushes can really shine, because hair is really difficult to draw or paint if you're doing it basically brushstroke by brushstroke, and it ends up looking really fake. And so I've found that these like frayed brushes can really add that spontaneity that would be really hard for humans to do naturally. Humans are just really good at picking up on patterns and doing things in patterns, so this is where knowing the anatomy of your subject can be really helpful, because I know these muscles so well that I don't have to draw anything in, and I already know. I know how they work, I know how they move, I know what these areas look like in different light. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that, and now I feel like I'm ready to go in with some of that white and do what we were doing with some of the areas before. I apologize, my camera ran out of space, so I had to unload it. But I continued working on this, so you're kind of catching me. I've made a little bit of progress, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I've made a little bit of progress since I last filmed, but what I'm doing, I was moving into with the small brush, and then I just realized I was getting way too tight about everything. It just was, fur texture wasn't looking good, really wasn't working. So I ended up grabbing this brush again, and I'm much happier. Going over everything. I've got a cool titanium white sort of mix. One of the things I'm kind of conscientious of when I'm doing horses is that once I get to more of these top layers, I'm very aware of which direction the fur goes in. And I try to have my brush strokes either go in the same direction or the opposite, because sometimes if you go the opposing way, it can give a really cool, not cool temperature-wise, but like a very dynamic texture. That looks a tad messy. So I'm gonna try to go in this small one. I'm gonna redo this a little bit just because it did get a little soft. Like it, I don't know, I just lost some of those darks. I can explain what I'm doing right now. I'm just fussing. I'm fussing a little bit just because I don't know that it looks exactly how I want it to, but looks closer. Just trying to see where I can kind of put, see if we can put like thick paint texture down. It's better. Happier with that. I'm gonna go into some of the tack before I fuss with the horse anymore. Definitely a lot of burnt umber. It's also a little bit I'm actually going to take titanium white and add that into that mixture. Actually, I'm gonna do a little bit of yellow ochre and burnt sienna. Mute that out a little bit. I'm actually gonna take mostly the Naples yellow because then that will, well, for part of it, for right there. There's kind of two colors that I see here, and one is a little warm, like that, and then there's another one that's very cool and very white. So the last thing I'm doing, I'm just going through and like double checking that everything looks how I want it to. Okay, I think we got it. I had a little bit of a panic attack at the very end because I just saw like little tweaks. As always, that's why it's so important to make sure that you take a step back from your painting or even like leave the room and then come back and look at it because it can look very different when you come back. Anyways, I made little tweaks. Overall, super pleased with how it looks. Love the background. It's soft, nothing draws attention. The saddle has great color and the right values. And then the horse, the head just really pops forward. And that is exactly what we wanted, was that wonderful pop. And we did it. So the last thing that we always have to do is sign our piece and then call it good for today.